Hi, this is EbodyNX and welcome to another TCF video. In this video, I want to talk to you about photographing street performers, or more accurately, how to get great shots of street performers. Now, whether you're a street photographer or whether you're on vacation, you'll find performers, dancers, comedians out in public trying to earn a living. And they can be really fun to photograph, but you still have to take into considerations all the things that we've talked about over the past couple of months in terms of what it takes to make a really good photograph. And I think oftentimes people will take a photograph of a performer and all of a sudden everything they know about photography goes out the window because they're not thinking about their overall composition. They're just trying to get a nice shot of this person doing whatever they're doing. And I want to encourage you that the next time that you go out and photograph a performer, to really think about all the elements that are in that frame in order to make a really good composition. So let me show you some examples here. First, we have the shot by RG. He shot this with a Canon EOS 6D with an exposure of 1/800th of a second at f4 at ISO 200. So you got this bagpiper, and his expression is fantastic. I mean, just the way he's blowing into that bagpipe, the way his cheek is puffing out, the sort of the reddishness of his face. That's wonderful stuff. And the lighting on him is great. We have some backlight here, so the hair on his head is backlit, but we're getting some wonderful fill light that's probably coming from the ground or from a wall behind the photographer, where we get great detail on the face, especially the eyes, and the exposure spot on. You're getting great detail throughout the entire tonal range, from the deep shadows of his shirt all the way to the top of his head. But the issue we have here, of course, is the background. And this is probably the number one thing you're going to encounter every time you go out and photograph a street performer, is that the background or the setting is going to be anything but ideal. There's going to be cars, there's going to be people, there's going to be just a whole bunch of different distractions behind the subject that may not make the photograph ideal. And because these people are out there making a living, you're not necessarily going to be able to ask them to move to a better location to make a photograph, unless you're willing to give them, be very generous and give them $20 or something. But for the most part, we have to find a way of making it work. And here, RG really had a difficult time in terms of having that pole on the left-hand side, having the cars in the back. So, one of the only things he could really do, and he does here, is use a fairly shallow depth of field. He's using what seems to be a 24 to 105, and he's all the way at 105, which creates this compression, but which also helps to blur the background, which works really nicely. He could eliminate a lot of the stuff that's happening on the edges of the frame by simply going vertical instead of horizontal. It would eliminate this pole here and much of the car here. And then it would just be a matter of just waiting for this car to move out of the frame and just to time it so that when he creates this expression again, you can make the ideal shot. But don't just photograph from that one position. I mean, if you've already dropped a couple of dollars into their basket or their hat, work the shot, move in closer, get a really tight shot that focuses just on this area, or even consider going down at a low angle and shooting up, or from the side, because it's possible that from the side you may get a cleaner and more natural background. Don't just shoot from a single position and move on. I've said it over and over again that you have to exhaust all the possibilities, and that's especially the case when you're photographing street performers where the background and the setting isn't ideal. Here we have a shot by Charles O'Neill. He shot this with a Canon EOS 7D at 1/200th of a second, f5.6 at ISO 200. And here Charlie is dealing with much the same thing in terms of not having a lot of control of the setting, but he makes great use of the lighting. The lighting again is backlit. We get this lovely edge lighting on the tweed coat here, on the edge of the instrument here, the hat. And the exposure is nailed because we get great detail on the clothing, on the face, and even right behind the sunglasses in terms of the eye. Here we have a setting, and it's not as busy or as distracting as the other one, right? So we've got it, and It's still busy, but it's not as problematic as the other one. We do have this figure here, which does call a lot of attention away from the subject, and that's largely because he possesses a lot of contrast. His dark suit against the light walkway here really draws our eye and starts competing for our attention with him. And I like the overall composition, but what I would love instead is that instead of this figure, taking a shot where you have a subject that's actually looking back in the direction of the saxophonist. At that point, even if the subject possesses a great degree of contrast, their eye line is going to take us back right to the saxophonist. Right now, our eye is drawn here, and this guy's looking off the frame, and so our eyes sort of wander off to the right. And we have to be really conscious about how all these different elements in the frame either lead us to or away from the subject. And in this case, it's leading us away from the subject. It's a marked improvement from the first shot in terms of what's happening with the background, but it could be better just as a matter of just waiting and shooting different people walking within the frame. And this is also a shot that could be helped greatly by just switching to a vertical shot, because if you went just vertical here, you eliminate all this area here where you have this figure that's being distracting and these people over here. And this as a vertical shot, I think, would be a fantastic portrait of this man that would take advantage of all the strengths that exist within this image. Here's another saxophonist. John Douglas made this shot. I don't see any XF information here, but here you see that a lot of the busyness in terms of cars, in terms of people, in terms of all that stuff, it's been eliminated. So now the only things we have is sort of this brickwork, this wall here, this sort of metal structure, what looks like maybe part of a platform. So again, it's not completely clean. In an ideal world, I would love for this bar or whatever this structure is and to be out of the frame, because I just don't like those lines. I love the brickwork and this and what looks to be like a light pattern falling on the wall. Love that. But this bar is a little bit distracting. But again, you can't have everything. So what you have to do is you got to make do with the situation that you have. And I think that John does an excellent job here. I love the light on this guy. I love the framing in terms of this, and especially like the light tone here and how he creates a wonderful separation between the darkness of his clothing and this light wall here. And there's some nice differentiation of tone right here on the hat and the face. And it's just a really, really wonderful shot. Sometimes we can't have a perfect shot. So instead of like tossing it and saying, well, if this thing wasn't here, I'd love, I'll never show the image, but it's still a good shot. It may not be perfect, but it has its strengths, and it's worth keeping and it's worth sharing. And I'm glad that John did that with this photograph. Now here's a shot by AF. Shot with a Sony SLT A35 at 1/250th of a second at f8 at ISO 100. And this is a wonderful example of an alternative to including a bunch of clutter in the background. Instead of shooting straight on this guitarist as she's playing, AF here decided to take it from the side and include Big Ben as a background element. And here, even though Big Ben is out of focus, we know exactly where she is. I can imagine that she's was probably on one of these bridges that crosses where you cross the Thames, and so there were probably a lot of people on the bridge. There was a lot of busyness behind her, but he or she did a wonderful job here by just making the composition as clean as possible. And look at how effective this shot is. Great light. Great moment. We have a wonderful expression on her face as she's singing, and we just have enough of a detail in the background to give us a great sense of place. You don't have to have a bunch of cars or buses or people there to tell us where we are. We immediately know where we are, and even though it's out of focus, we just have just enough detail to tell that story. And that's kind of what I'm talking about. Take a look at what different choices you have in terms of camera position, lens choice, and perspective that will help you tell and create as clean an image as possible. Here's a shot by Fernando Pereira, shot with the Panasonic DMC GX7, shot at 1/60th of a second at f2 at ISO 200. Now this shot here has a wonderful, wonderful background. We have this security gate that's covered with graffiti, and you have these two older gentlemen playing their instruments. And here, that whole background provides a wonderful setting. Here, we've got these guys with great faces. There's some wonderful color interplay happening between the wall and them. There's some repetition of color from like this sort of lime green yellow of his shirt to the graffiti over here in the upper left, and then the white tones here and the red of the graffiti and the security gate here. So I think here, in terms of the subject and the setting, it's happening. I mean, this is as good a situation as you can get when you're photographing people on the street. Now, part of photographing on the street, photographing performers on the street, is the fact they're performing for an audience. And we have this guy here on the left-hand side of the frame who's looking in, and he's an important part of the shot. And my only critique of the shot is, why do you cut him off here on the frame? He's an important part of this shot, and cutting him off at the edge here weakens the shot. I would have loved to either have Fernando back up a little to include him completely, or just shifted the camera position to the left so that you would have them not in the center, but at this third point, if you use the rule of thirds, and then him on the edge of the frame somewhere around here. He's part of the story. He's part of this image. And one of the things that you want to do when you're photographing performers is take a look at the audience. You know, they're captivated by what the performers are doing, and they're completely oblivious to the photographer who may be directing their camera lens at them. You want to create shots that makes them part of the narrative. Take advantage of that. Certainly, you know, focus on the performers, make some nice portraits of them, you know, doing their show, but try to see if you can build photographs in which the spectators are part of the image, because in that way the images become that much more interesting. So as well as the background, look at the people that are looking at the scene as intently as you are. And here's the last image by Benjamin Brown. No XF data here. And I think this shot really is a shot that kind of does everything right in terms of, we have the performers, we have a great background in terms of this graffitied building or apartment. It's filled with graffiti and color, and then we have these people, one of whom seems to be crossing into the path of the performers, while this other person seems to be having stopped from shopping and is enjoying the performance. And all the elements of the shot here are just working really, really beautifully. This is the kind of shot I'm encouraging you guys to look for, in which you're not just photographing the performer in isolation, without any context for where they are and who's looking at them, but you know, make the shot of the performer, but then back up, pause for a moment, and think about everything else that's in the frame. How can those different elements that are in the frame, whether they're a building, whether they're graffiti, whether they're signage, whether they're people, how can you use all the elements that are in front of you as part of a successful photograph? And you're going to make different choices in terms of where you position yourself and what lens you use and what focal length you use and all those other things. But that's part of the creative fun of photography. If you just stop where you are, you raise the camera to your eye, and you just take that one picture and then you walk on, it's a missed opportunity. And every time you stop to make a photograph, you want to squeeze as much juice from that lemon as you can. Sometimes a great shot is just a millimeter away, because of a small change that you make in the way you're handling the camera, the way you're composing the scene, will make all the difference between a snapshot and a great shot. So you don't want to miss that opportunity, and especially with cooperative subjects such as street performers. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't heard of the Candid Frame before, You can find us at thecandidframe.com, where we have interviews with some of the world's best photographers. And if you haven't already, you can join the Candid Frame Flickr Group for free. Just go to the Flickr Group on Flickr, ask to be added, and I'll be glad to do so. So thanks again for joining me, and I will see you next time.